Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, as you can see from the title, we're going to be talking about all of the new foundations that have recently launched. I went to Sephora and picked up pretty much samples of everything. I was going to buy, but then I realized that I was really only going to fall in love with one. And I didn't want to be that asshole to buy in return because that's not great because it's wasteful. So instead, I only got samples, and I'm going to let you guys know my thoughts on all of these, as well as which one I am wearing today, I have fallen in love with, and am already purchasing a full size of. So if that's something you're into, make sure to keep on watching, and please don't forget to subscribe because I do upload 3 times a week, and that is the best way to stay up to date on all the fun stuff I'm posting. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can get notified every time I upload, which once again is 3 times a week. So if you want to see my thoughts on all of these new foundations, as well as the one that I have officially fallen in love with, make sure to keep on watching. So the first foundation I'm going to talk about is obviously going to be the one I love the most. It is going to be the Urban Decay Stay Naked Weightless Foundation. Now this foundation retails for $39. It comes in 50 shades. I am in the shade CP30 or 30 CP. My thoughts, first, I was a little bit weirded out by the fact that the shade range was so specific. Once you finally learn what those mean, it's super easy to navigate. They are broken down into categories. So 10 is ultra fair, 20 is fair, 30 is light, all the way to 60, which is going to be your deepest shades. And then the 2 letters are going to be what it is. So I'm 30 CP, which means that I am 30, so light. CP as in cool pink. It is the shade I'm wearing today, and it is my favorite of all of the new foundations. I will be getting it in a full size because I am that obsessed with it. It does not get greasy throughout the day. It is a natural finish. It does not get super drying on dry skin from what I've been told, but I have watched a couple reviews and I've noticed that certain people with dry skin have found it a little drying. So do make sure you take it with a more hydrating primer. I do use it with my normal combination of primers and moisturizers and powders, and I notice that I don't get super shiny. Any luminosity you see to the skin today is from illuminating setting powders and highlight. If you do end up getting this foundation, I have found that I prefer to apply this with a brush and then finesse it with a sponge. That's pretty much how I like to do most foundations, and the foundations that work for me tend to work best that way. Some of the foundations we're going to go into today are a little bit better with either a brush or a sponge. This is one that I actually do like to apply the way I pretty much apply everything. Next, we have the Pat McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Foundation. I was in the shade Light Medium 11, which is a light medium with pink undertones. And this foundation wore really beautifully. It applied super nice. I did prefer the way that this applied with a brush. I did not love it with a sponge. But my issue is that the coverage was just a little too sheer for me. I personally like a little bit more of a medium buildable coverage. I will build up to full. There are days I will sheer it out, but for the most part, I do like to have a little bit more coverage. I think that for $68, it didn't quite do enough for what I wanted it to do. Now, it did look super effortless on. It did really even out the skin. But honestly, I also tried out the new Sephora Collection Tinted Moisturizer, and I was in the shade 4. I don't think there's much of a difference between the two. Dupe alert, if you are really craving for the Skin Fetish Foundation and you don't have $68 to drop on a foundation, check out the Sephora Collection Tinted Moisturizer, because honestly, I did like a half and half on one of the days, and I don't think I was able to see really any difference between the two. They were sheer in coverage, they were a natural finish, they looked really nice on the skin, but they weren't really foundation-y. And if I can get one for $18, I'm going to do that, because you could totally save $50 by going for the Sephora one. The Pat McGrath Labs comes in 36 foundations, and the Sephora collection comes in, I think, 12? The Sephora collection comes in 16 shades. So you definitely have more shade options with the Pat McGrath, but honestly, if you fit into one of the 16 shades of the Sephora collection one, go for that one, because it's basically the same thing, just a whole lot cheaper. Next, we have the Fenty Beauty Hydrating Foundation. Now, you guys know I have been a fan of the original Fenty foundation. Since, one of the first videos, the first foundation review I did on my channel a very long time ago was the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Foundation. I'm in love with it. The hydrating one is definitely not for me. If you have dry skin, I think it'll be a lot better for you. The one thing I found was really cool is that it does come in 50 shades, and it is a 1-to-1 foundation So that means that I was shade 200 in the original. So 200 was my perfect shade for the hydrating. Sometimes you'll notice from complexion to complexion, within one brand, the colors might not be identical. That is not the case for this one. If you are shade 200, you will still be 200 in the other formulas. A little more glowy than I like and a little bit more liquidy. I did find that it applied best with a sponge. I know that a dense kabuki brush would also work pretty well, but for me, a traditional sponge, I used a beauty blender, nice and boring. Worked the best for me just because it did give it the best appearance on the skin. The other one, the original Fenty, is a little more full coverage. I did find the hydrating to be a little bit more of like a, I don't want to say medium coverage, but it's definitely more of a medium coverage. Just like the original, it does retail for $35, so not nearly as expensive as the Pat McGrath, but about the same price point as like the Urban Decay. Next, we have the Laura Mercier New Tinted Moisturizer. It retails for $47 and comes in, sorry, I have my notes here, comes in 20 shades. Compared to the Sephora Collection Tinted Moisturizer, I don't think I loved it as much. I also really love, if I'm going to go for like the tinted moisturizer route, you guys know I love the Waso by Shiseido Tinted Moisturizer, which is like a color smart, lightweight, very minimal coverage. I'm not really a fan of tinted moisturizers for the most part, for the same reason I don't love the Pat McGrath foundation. I want a little bit more out of my complexion. If I'm doing makeup and wearing makeup throughout the day, I want foundation. If I'm not, I don't really do tinted moisturizers. I just go barefaced. Like at that point, I'm like, why am I putting all this effort in for sheer to no coverage? That is a personal preference. That does not mean that I am looking down on sheer foundations. If that's what you love, keep doing it. My favorite part about makeup, and I've said this before, is it is so personal. What you love is not going to be what I love. However, that being said, I didn't love the tinted moisturizer. Next, coming in 40 shades for $36 is the Smashbox Studio Skin Full Coverage 24-Hour Foundation. I'm going to actually lump this into a category with the Anastasia Beverly Hills Foundation. Both of them wore pretty nicely on the skin. I liked the way that they looked. However, neither of them comes in a shade that is pink enough for my complexion. All of the shades seem to run very yellow. This was the closest shade match I can find in the Anastasia, which is also the shade the Color IQ recommended for me. And I'm going to show you this right here. Do you see how yellow that looks? That's not my complexion. Like, I don't mind going a little darker or lighter to try and make something work if I want to brighten it with powders or deepen it up with bronzer, but I need it to at least match my undertone. Both of those foundations did go very, very yellow, which not the end of the world if that's your undertone, but for someone like me who my perfect foundation shade is pretty damn pink, it just doesn't work. So I was not able to make it work, and hopefully they're going to expand their shade ranges to the point where they do have a little bit more pink options for those of us who are true cool undertones. But so many foundations, they'll like say that it's cool and it'll be neutral, and everything else will be super warm or super yellow. And the last foundation I'm going to talk about is not actually a new launch, but the Becca Cosmetics Ultimate Coverage 24-Hour Foundation did expand their shade range. I did want to mention them because it retails for $44. It is 42 shades, and that is after a recent shade expansion. For the longest time, I wanted to try this foundation, but just like the Smashbox and the Anastasia, it did not come in a color that matched my complexion. Everything ran very yellow. They listened, and they did great, and they expanded their shade range. This is the shade Bisque, and it is actually a pink shade. I love the way it wore. It did wear really nicely on the skin. I will say that I did get quite a bit of shine coming through it around the 8-hour mark. So I think if you're more normal combination or even dry, it might be a little bit better for you. If I would have wanted to touch up throughout the day, I could have made it work. So it's not something I'm going to wear for like, I want to go out and not look shiny and not have to touch up. But if I was like going out for dinner or something where I'm not going out until like 6 and I'm getting ready and it won't be a super late night, definitely like a nice evening foundation if I know I'm only going to be wearing it for a couple hours. I just wanted to give them a quick shout out and honorable mention because honestly, the fact that that foundation has been out for years, and the fact that they turned around and expanded their shade range to embrace some of us who are a little pinker, I think that that is amazing. I know for the longest time we've been talking about inclusivity in foundations, and I know that my struggle is not the same as those with much deeper complexions. For the longest time, foundations have been skewed towards lighter shades. Even in that, I have been very hard-pressed to find perfect matches because the light shades really only cater towards those people who are neutral or golden. So I'm not saying my struggle is the same as those with deeper skin. I know that it is much harder for them to find a good foundation. However, the fact that brands are now coming out with shades that are much deeper as well as much pinker makes me very happy because both sides of the spectrum, the fair and pink and the overall deep, can be included and actually have foundations that match. All right, I'm getting off my soapbox. I'm done being preachy. This has been a roundup of all of the new foundation launches at Sephora. Let me know down below which of the foundations you have either sampled at Sephora, tried, or purchased. I love hearing your guys' feedback because what works for me does not necessarily work for you. Thank you again, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.